Hello and welcome to Serpent Temple. This week we are going to be doing a weekly review of 3 fresh releases that have just dropped. The first one is going to be by Nechochwen. It is called Kanawha Black. The second one, and bear with me, is by the band Tzompantli, and it is called Tlazcaltiliztli. Forgive me if I did that wrong. The third one is by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and it is called Omnium Gatherum. So we have a mouthful of bands this week.
It's like a Dr. Seuss book.
Where are my green eggs? So what did you think of Nechochwen, Floyd?
Well, first and foremost, before we get into the review, I just want to
Yes.
say a massive rest in peace to Trevor Sternad, who passed away this week. And I think, Black Dahlia Murder were one of those bands where I feel like, much in the same way that I feel like Slipknot are a gateway bands to get a lot of people into like the extended metal scene. I felt like Black Dahlia were one of those bands that helped people bridge the gap from their love of mellow death and metalcore into the death metal realm. And Trevor, how I kind of always appreciated him was just for his absolutely unrelenting passion for the death metal genre. I mean, he was an absolute champion for the genre and like a real supporter of the underground scene. And I think it's just such a tragic loss. I think not since Riley Gale has a death in the scene been so impactful.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a massive shout out to the Black Dahlia crew and his family. And I think it's worth saying as well, it's in the band statement, they released the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. So I'm not going to speculate as to what the cause of death was, but I think anybody with 2 brain cells can read between the lines. So I think it's just worth saying that if anybody out there is struggling, just, it's worthwhile just reaching out. There's people out there willing to help.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, please don't ever feel like you can't tell someone that you're struggling. It's okay. Everyone does. And there's always someone who wants to be there for you. So anyone listening, if you're having a hard time, please, don't keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Nechochwen. So this is a band that has been on my radar for quite a few years now. I think I first listened to them with the Heart of Akamon album, which was their 3rd album. And it's cool because as a band, they've gotten kind of progressively more metal as the times went along. So their first album was basically just an acoustic album. It was kind of like neo-folky. And then they start to add more and more elements, like there's more black metal layers. And what I like in this album is they've kind of reached this point where they've got quite a lot of trad elements in the music. I think I liked that addition to a lot of the songs, and there's a lot going on in this album. There's a lot going on in all the albums we're reviewing this week.
Yeah.
But I think this is definitely a very worthy addition to their discography. I just love the lyrical inspiration as well, the whole Native American, and I believe it is the Westfall kind of side or tribe they're mainly focusing around.
I think so. I think I wrote it down at some point.
But either way, I just think it's cool. And this is actually going to be touched upon again in the Tzompantli album. And I just think it's just super cool when the band kind of gets in touch with like the indigenous roots of the country that they're based upon, and and recognizes that that there are cultures that predate the people that eventually ended up settling in that country. Yeah. And I think it's important to remember that and realize that that there is a space for everyone still.
There was essentially a genocide that is never talked about, and I can't remember. There's a term for it. It's like something like about a great whole, but yeah, generations of families were torn apart, and this was happening literally 100 years ago. There was still American Indian kids were being taken away from their parents and put into these like horrible institutions where they were abused. They lost their history, their family, their culture. Like the language was intentionally, there was attempts to destroy it. So it's amazing that there are people who are preserving that and going against like the colonization essentially that happened with that culture.
Yeah. It's I'll tell you one thing I never realized until a few years ago, just how fucked up the whole First Nations thing was in Canada. I felt like for years, I'm not having to dig at Canadians, but I felt like for years, there's it's so easy, like USA or North America at times is such low-hanging fruit in terms of like taking jabs at them. Like see all the memes online of like, as soon as they insult like, the fact that we drink tea, like a British person goes, well, you shut up your schools. And, just shit like that. But I feel like, like Canada has barely answered for the shit that they've been doing. So it's the fucking same, really.
Yeah, it is. Like, honestly, there is a lot of, I mean, Canadians have like a very good rep for being like polite and lovely, and like perhaps they are more polite than Americans. I can't really speak as a racial expert on culture and politeness. I don't think it's really like important, but historically, yes, there is a lot of horrific stuff. There's some interesting documentaries that you can go and watch about the history of Native people in both Canada and America, and I thoroughly recommend it, especially for people who like to learn about stuff that you would not be taught about at school, because it goes against like the traditional narrative of like, you know, how great it is that Europe colonized the world. Make of that what you will, basically. But yeah.
Yeah, I've still never been to the British Museum.
I have mixed feelings about the British Museum.
No.
Yeah.
I bet. Anyway, so back to the album and the band in question itself. So this band's from West Virginia, signed to Binderin Records. Well, that's what this album was released on anyway. You've got, I'm presuming these are their pseudonyms. You got Poho Nassin, who covers drums, bass, hand percussion, and the Jew's harp. And Nechochwen, which is the namesake of the band as well, who performs the guitar, vocals, and flute duties. So I even from the very beginning of this album, so the title track Kanawha Black, I loved it. I really love the combination of different sort of subgenres of metal, especially like the trad style being mixed in with black metal.
Totally.
And it's so cool, and it's funny because it's something that Bathory were touching upon decades ago.
That's interesting.
But kind of fell to the wayside with the second wave stuff, and everything kind of diversified and became a bit more modernized. But I like the fact now that kind of traditional sort of like classic sort of trad heavy metal sound is being brought back into the fold by some bands and being revitalized in the pure scene as well by bands like Visigoth, for example. And it's it's I really love the vocal delivery on this album as well. It's a really varied vocal performance. I don't know if it's the same person. I don't know if it's Nechochwen themselves who's handling all the vocal duties, but like there's a good combination of like black and like raspy vocals. There's some really cool gutturals on one of the tracks that I thought were super cool, and I really like the clean vocals as well.
Yeah,
kind of a bit Candlemassy at times, you know, a bit doomy, and you know, it's just heavily enjoyed the vast majority of this album.
I literally wrote the same thing as you about the vocals. Like there is so much variation, and I think that's actually really rare in a lot of records, is that often there's like one or two kinds of vocal and not always by the same person. But there is a lot of like, I feel like this album, there's a lot of storytelling in it, and I feel like the vocals reflect that. I feel like the vocals are always trying to convey something and then not doing it in the same way over and over again. And I think that's really masterful. Like there's whispering, there's talking, there's cleans, there's harsh, and like I really love the harmonies in this, because they're not your usual harmonies. They're kind of, they feel more authentic to the kind of culture that it's coming from my understanding, which isn't great, but it does feel unique, and I love that. I really love that there's a real sense of identity and a real sense of story, which I think is so important in music, because that's where music comes from, is storytelling. That's like where it originated, was people trying to pass on wisdom and knowledge and culture and heritage, I guess, if you want to talk about that too. But yeah, this is a really interesting creation, and I love that we basically have two albums on this week that are from people who are from the Americas, but it's about cultures that predate the colonization of those regions. Yeah.
And it was totally by accident as well. It just kind of happened. Yeah,
it's just true. Yeah.
But it's no, I totally agree with everything you're saying. One of my favorite tracks on the album, Generations of War, which I think is quite a powerful name in itself.
Yeah.
I think the compositional skill and the instrumentation of a lot of these tracks is absolutely amazing. I love the bass work. It's almost jazzy at parts as well. But this track in particular, Generations of War, starts with a really kind of melodic, somber, kind of folky passage. And you get this really kind of like bluesy, jazzy drum and bass, and then some really cool like flute work as well.
Yeah.
And then the track just fucking drops, and then obviously the distorted guitars come in, and it's just like, it totally feels like, you know, when you watch like the movies and you've got like the calm before the storm.
Yeah.
We've got that piece of like cinematic music where just like you're looking over the ridge and you see like an army of people coming towards you. Then all of a sudden, like every shit just kicks off, and it's just mayhem.
Yes.
But that's kind of what this track kind of. That's what I was picturing in my head while listening to this track.
There's a lot of like insane energy, like that's really beautifully carried through the whole album, of like the ebbs and flows and the sort of contrasts and colors that are there. And yeah, there's some really powerful imagery with like just the song titles alone. Like I love the title Visions, Dreams and Signs. That's so like so intriguing. I tried to look for the lyrics, but I don't think I could find them yet.
Yeah, that was a super cool track as well. And it's, you touched upon something that I think is just really important, just going back to the vocal variety in this album again. And I feel like, in the black metal genre, I'm not like this is a pure black metal album, because it isn't, but it's definitely got elements of it in there. But I feel like in so many of the respective subgenres that are the most prominent in the scene, you get this, it's so homogenous. And there's so much shit that sounds so contrived and so similar to other things. It's always so refreshing to hear, and I think that's what attracted me to the band in the first place. And it's not a gimmick, because I feel like that's the thing as well. If it comes across like a gimmick, then it comes across as a bit disingenuous.
Cult of Fire.
Yeah, even though I enjoy Cult of Fire, but I haven't learned. It's.
I don't, but it's cool that you do, but I really don't.
But it's but that's a very valid example. Like it's like when it's when it is disingenuous. Like it's easy to just form the opinion of, well, this band's just doing this just as like a gimmick or a cash in.
It's appropriation.
Yeah,
it would literally be appropriation. Like I did research to make sure the person making this music wasn't just a random white guy. Because then it would be a very different album if that was the case.
Yeah,
I think context is very essential with stuff like this.
Yeah, because I think it's like going back to what obviously you weren't there, but when me and Shem were reviewing like Aether of Flame, so obviously that shares the same drummer as Cult of Fire. You've got Thomas Korn.
No,
but the thing is, like but the interesting thing is like Aether of Flame as an album is much more exploring spirituality in the broader sense.
Like
Yeah,
it's not about, they don't like dress up and sit on like big cobras and look like they're on an Indiana Jones set. Yeah.
I've never watched an Indiana Jones film.
They're fucking awful.
Are they?
They're like horrifically colonialist, and a lot of listeners are probably like, what is she talking about? But they're quite...
I don't know.
They're problematic for people like me to watch them. I'm just like, fucking hell, really? They're eating sheep's eyeballs. Like, because of those films, when I was a kid going to school, people would come up to me and be like, oh, Nina, do you eat sheep's eyeballs? Is it like in that bit in Indiana Jones?
Really?
I would not know what they're talking about. And then I watched it a few years ago and I was like, fucking hell, this is pretty racist. There's some really awful shit in there.
Yeah, okay, I'll keep that in mind forever. I've reached 3.5 decades on this planet without watching them. I think I'd probably manage a bit longer. I've just always been kind of like anti anything Lucas for some reason, just out of pure stubbornness.
Even Shem.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. But it's that thing of, when you grow up never watching something and you feel like you've got to a point, it was like, I'm too stubborn to change this now. Because I've never seen a Star Wars film. No, tell a lie. I went to the cinema to watch the first of the new ones. Because Amy wanted some to watch, and I was like, this is wank. But
it's nice to look at, but it's just whatever, man. Like, watch Star Trek is better.
Yeah, no, I keep that in mind. Oh, well, Farscape.
Farscape is so good. So underrated. Yeah.
I had such a crush on the blue alien.
I had crushes on like the guy with the big beard, the weird chin beard.
Yeah.
I don't know what was wrong with me as a kid. And Scorpius.
Oh, Scorpius.
I had a huge crush on Scorpius.
Good Scorpius.
Yeah, good old Scorpius. Weird, wrinkly old man in BDSM gear.
But no. But you know what? It's one thing I like about this band is they're kind of adding to this interesting kind of thing that's happening in the US kind of black indoor metal scene in general. Like, there's bands that are kind of straying away from some of the more problematic tenets of black metal, such as, some of the Scandinavian or Finnish scenes. And they're exploring their own territory. So bands like Panopticon as well. Like
these guys had a split with Panopticon.
Yeah, and I actually didn't know that until I looked it up earlier. I didn't realize they had a split with them. And then I think one of the members at some point was in that band Obsequy. I don't know if you ever listened to Obsequy.
I've heard you recommend them before.
They're quite good. Like really, really like super melodic black metal, like very lead heavy.
I think I might have listened to them.
Quite good. It's like I've got to be in a certain mood for them because they're really like melodic, but it's like it's pretty good. And I think it's kind of like I like bands that kind of are not just copying their European counterparts or or just trying to find and do their own thing and try and find out what's true to them. And, go back to my point about, not just taking on a gimmick and doing something that actually means something to them. Because then, I think that causes the listener to be able to connect more easily with the band and the music.
I think that's really interesting, is that someone from a completely different culture and walk of life can make anyone connect with their identity, their authenticity, or like their creative vision. Like, and this applies not just to this band, but to many bands. Like, oftentimes I personally find myself really drawn to people who are expressing themselves in a really authentic way. And I think that's kind of awesome, that you don't have to be like this homogenous. It's got to be like European. It's got to be recognizably like this band or that band or that musical system. Like, oftentimes actually people's own like way of expressing themselves is the way that they can connect with the most people, which is kind of weirdly, what's the word? The other way around from what you'd expect it to be, I guess.
I just got the opposite in my head.
I guess.
Yeah, no, contrarian maybe. No.
Contrary.
Contrary. Yeah,
Contrary.
That works, yeah. You're totally right, and it's funny because it reminds me of when I was watching that Enslaved documentary in preparation for that Enslaved special we did, and like I can't forget which band member it was. It might have been Ivor, the guitarist, was saying that like when we listen to music about or write music about our culture and our, lack of a better term, heritage, it makes us want to explore other cultures and listen to bands that are doing the same thing, so not copying us and appropriating things that are important to us and our heritage but are important to theirs. And it's kind of like like obviously with my parents both being Scottish, it's like I've always been fascinated by like say the Gaelic language and stuff, and listening to how and just finding out about that history, but also while appreciating and realizing that I live in the modern world, and there was a different time back then, and like it's it's just a tricky one, isn't it? Because it could so very easily veer into problematic territory.
It can. It's really a fine line, and it's interesting because obviously I do that in Lowen, like in my band, like I'm it's about my heritage, but it's not. It's I guess it's the line, the really difficult line to navigate is you're never saying mine's better than yours.
Yeah.
Which I think that's where people start going down the dark road of supremacy, of like whatever culture they're touting or ideology, I guess, because it's not necessarily ideological when you're trying to preserve something that isn't part of the dominant force of culture around you. I think that's the good fight, I guess, depending on what it is. It's not like, child sacrifice, which no one's doing, so it's fine.
That's a good point. I felt like in that sentence alone, you named like 5 Hatebreed albums. So like Perseverance, Supremacy, Domination. Yeah.
Are Hatebreed sus? I'm joking.
Well, the thing is, well, no, they're not sus, but like I remember when I was like back in my LimeWire and in my Bearshare days when I was down music online. Do you have a Bearshare?
That sounds like an app.
Yeah. There's probably another Bearshare out there that's probably very which
very
are probably
popular
quite
in
popular.
Soho. Yeah.
But it's but yeah, I think Bearshare was the precursor to LimeWire and Kazaa.
I did not know that.
And there was another one, WinMX, which had WinMX had chat rooms which were unmonitored, and there was some real fucked up shit going on there. I can tell you that for a fact.
Oh dear.
But anyway, that was my original point. Yeah, so I was looking up Hatebreed. They had a track which isn't their track, but it was under the Hatebreed name. It was just like it had the M word in it.
No. But it wasn't actually Hatebreed.
But it's not a Hatebreed song.
But
But for some reason, there was a track listed, and I can't remember what it was called, but I just remember it had the M word in it. I remember looking them up, and I was like, oh! And it wasn't until, a few years later that I realized
you realized it wasn't them. Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. You know what? If LimeWire was still around, it would be such a funny way of virally, not like with the Hatebreed thing, but like marketing your music, is to label it as something really popular, and then like it just be your song, and then have people download it, and then like work it out. I mean, it depends on what it is. Like.
Yeah. That's true. Because I remember there was the whole thing where there was another thing that I downloaded, which which I thought was legit for the longest time as well, was somebody had uploaded this track and they pretended it was a collaboration between Korn, Slipknot, and Deftones.
No.
But it was this track by this random new metal band, and it was almost like this guerrilla marketing technique.
That's so clever.
Like so many people were downloading this track. I got to try and remember what it's called. I think it had the word bullet in it somewhere, but I remember listening to it.
This sounds familiar, you know.
It's not Bullet with a Name. That's a non-point track. Like that, yeah. But there's something Bullet, and it's like, and it was fucking online on all these file sharing sites, and it was listed as Slipknot, Korn, and Deftones. I was like, I got to listen to this, and it was like, I was like, this doesn't sound like any of them. I'll find out what it is.
I saw a meme today that would have made you cringe because it was like kids today will never know what it's like to have like 5 versions of a band in your iPod, and it's all like capitalized differently, or it's just like the same but it's different, and there's all these different like formatting changes. I know that you would go through your iTunes and change everything to be the same thing. I did not do that.
Well, here's a funny story, and this is a testament to my my anal retentiveness. So I was a CD guy, so I grew up basically in the CD era. I had a couple cassettes, but then CDs came out, and I was like, well, this is much better. The quality is easier, and this is it's funny now saying that this is much more kind of what's the word when something's more? I'll go with accessible for now to like digest the music, because I could just press a button and it skips a track.
It's convenient.
Whereas like now, you can just everything's available at your disposal. But it's so I was a CD guy. So this was pre-iTunes. So when I had my computer and I had dial-up, I ripped every single CD to my computer's library. I think it would have been with QuickTime. Not realizing that, because I had dial-up and my mum used the phone a lot. I wasn't connected to the internet because my mum was on the phone to like my grandparents and aunts and uncles and stuff.
Oh no, so did you lose?
No, it's not that. So if you were connected to the internet and you ripped the CD, then it had most of the track information for you.
Oh.
I ripped 500 CDs and personally typed the title of every single track, album, all the information. And it took me months.
If you ever want to get like a job at Spotify, you could just tell them that story, and they will just like have tears in their eyes and be like, "You could have the job."
Yeah, but like it's just crazy because I was thinking, not once did I rip it while connected to the internet and realized. I think it was like near the end. So it was maybe like on album, maybe like 420. When I was just like, oh, this is gonna save me a lot of time. But yeah, I was totally that guy that had to rename the track to make sure that there was no random.
That's amazing. Yeah. I used to be like that when we started the podcast. I'd be really anal about the formatting, and now I just don't care.
Yeah, so just enough.
Whatever, it's fine.
Right, should we summarise on the Nechochwen album after that digression?
I think I should probably say they wrote on their Bandcamp about the sort of inspiration behind this album, and they say it's inspired by factual and anecdotal events in American prehistory and frontier history, and like they acknowledge it's a slight change in their tone and their sound as well, because it took several years to write it, and during that time it sounds like the exploration and the topics and the sound evolved. They talk about how, so from my understanding, Nechochwen is a tributary of the Ohio River.
No.
And like the specific sort of region and the history they explore is that part of West Virginia, and the Ohio River Valley, as well as the Laurel Highlands of Pennsylvania. So that's like their area of artistic influence. And they say that they hope that the songs will convey to the listener the essence of the past, even in fleeting moments in our modern lives. So I think that's really interesting. I think that's really cool that they've done that. And Kanawha apparently is a Shawnee word meaning new water. I googled that, so I don't know if that's true. And apparently there's a Catawba word where it also means friendly brother.
Oh. And
I think I read in an interview that this guy, when the guy behind this album, when he was 14, his friend named him Nechochwen because he was, I think it was Nechochwen. It was I think so, because apparently he was like his own person.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, but this is me 12 hours ago, very sleep deprived, so I may have misread it.
Yeah. Well, as always, I'll take your word for it. But no, it's no, and I think you touched upon the point of them taking a while to write this album, and I think I think they definitely delivered. It's a marked progression from previous albums.
Yeah.
No doubt, you have some people that will prefer the more kind of like black metal, folky stylings of the previous albums, but I feel like there's just such a clear progression on here. Like, it even reminded me of Opeth quite a few of the times.
Absolutely.
Like that real focus on the rhythm section and that drive and like bass beat and elements of like bluesiness, which I think is quite central to that kind of like Americana sound as well. But yeah, just thought it was a really, really solid album. I need to listen to it again because I've only listened to it the once, and it's one of those albums that I feel like it has layers and more's going to be revealed with repeated listens.
Absolutely. I think this is like, a still waters run deep with lots of enslaved riffs underneath the water.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's a fantastic album. Thank you again for the insane recommendations this
no
week.
worries.
Which probably moves us on to the next album. And I've got to say, this is probably going to be my album of the year.
Oh, it's going to be up there for sure for me, 100%.
I lost my shit when I listened to this. I was like, holy fuck, where did you find these people? So the band is, let me find it because I don't want to, I'm going to try and do it as much justice as I can. So the band is Tzompantli, and the album is called Tlazcaltiliztli, I think.
I think it's pretty damn good. Much better than I could manage.
It's a mouthful. Let me say that much. It's already got a good number of streams. Actually, it's already in the multi-thousands. So I'm so glad it's doing well because this band deserve to be so much bigger. This is their first album, which blows my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, it's a band from Pomona, California. They're signed to $20 Spin. You've got the legendary G-Bone on bass. What a name. G-Bone.
I don't know who he is, but fuck me.
What a name.
That's such a good name.
I wish I had that nickname.
I want all of us to have that name.
Yeah.
G-Bone.
F-Bone. Nah, doesn't work.
No. That sounds like a different kind of bone.
Yeah. Fuck bone. And you've got Errol Ugg performing drum duties and the Big O on vocals, guitars, bass, didgeridoo, and the animal and death rattle flutes.
How cool is that?
And that's one thing that's cool about this album. I love the percussion and all the kind of indigenous instrumentation going on here.
The death whistles, what the fuck, man?
So,
they're so cool. I want to buy a death whistle.
Yeah.
Maybe cut that one out. Let's move on.
Like an orgasm whistle.
I'm randomly orgasming in the corner.
which is fair because I was close to orgasm when I was listening to this album.
Yeah, I remember last night I was doing my notes and Shem was like, "Oh, what is it then?" And I was like, "Oh, you're gonna really like it. It's amazing." He was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And I put it on and he's just like, "What the fuck? This is like bolt thrower." And I was like, "I know, right?"
Yeah.
And we just started vibing to this album. I've listened to it 3 times in
It's
the
sick.
last day. It's so good.
I think he summed up pretty well actually, because he's saying it's like boat thrower mixed with like ruins of Beverast, and it's totally got that that atmospheric, but it's just it's like everything I enjoy in metal kind of wrapped up into one.
Same.
Uber guttural vocals, proper Will Rama from Mortician style,
so
but without the
big.
super shit production.
Yeah.
It sounds and I love the other vocal shit going on, like the shamanic chanting and just some of the yells going on. It just sounds so cool, and it's funny. And I'm not shitting on this band, but the band Alien Weaponry.
Yeah.
That's cool and whatnot, and the young kids and stuff. But that's I never really dug what that band was going for, but I felt because they're also singing about the Maori tribes and stuff, and I felt like it had too much of a Western veneer to it.
I get you. It's
Whereas this sounds like what I would imagine it would be like to be fucking around the fucking Aztec time.
So here's a cool fact: Tzompantli is the name for a skull rack.
That's cool.
Used to display human skulls, often of enemies or sacrifices, in several Mesoamerican civilizations. That is so fucking cool.
That's a cool. Yeah, that's pretty rad.
That is so. I googled as much as I could of the song names, which are all very complex for a Western mouth. So the first one, Tlazcaltiliztli, means. Well, actually, no, that's the second song. That's the title track. Wait, no, it's not. It's the second song. It means something begun, or a creation. And this is all Nechochwen, which is the language, one of the languages of the region that's very old.
Yeah.
And it's a very cool, beautiful language. The first song, Yauhu Huatl, please forgive me for dismembering all these song titles, is Nahuatl for War Drum, which is appropriate because this feels like the best war metal album I've ever listened to.
Yeah.
Like, this is my new Manowar, frankly.
Yeah.
And then the title track, Tlazcaltiliztli, nourishing. So this is what I got on the dictionary online, so it could just be absolute trash. But I've got nourishing the fire and sun with blood, a ceremony or ritual. And then Eltequi, the fourth track, to cut the chest open, part of human sacrifice, to extract the heart that will serve as an offering to the divinities or deities. I couldn't get anything for the fifth track, which is probably the hardest to pronounce, which was... Why am I doing this to myself? Which was Tlazcaltiliztli Pale Kahwalatzli, I think.
That's a pretty damn fucking good job. I mean, not like I'm a fucking expert, but I mean, that sounds close.
Maybe G-Bone can tell me if I'm right or wrong. But then 6 is Tzompantli, which is much easier to say, which is apparently an offering, gift, or present, or something flat placed on the ground, or a large flat plate, like a kamali, I don't know what that is, where pottery is placed so it can be turned and shaped. Oh, so I guess like a potter's table. Or something carried, a burden borne on one's back. Blah. And then the 7th track is Tlazcaltiliztli, which I couldn't find a definition of. But yeah, that's the general gist of the album, which is fucking cool and heavy.
That's metal as fuck, isn't it?
So fucking metal. This is like the most brutal fucking album. And like, I can't remember which track it is, but there's a track like 1 or 2 minutes in, they just howl like wolves.
Yeah, the wolf track, I'm pretty sure that's the title track.
It's so good. I've just been randomly howling like a wolf for the last day or so because it's just so...
It's super cool.
It
might be...
I think it might actually be the 5th or the 7th track. It was one of the long track name tracks.
I think you might be right. That's the tricky thing with not knowing this language is it's easy to get the tracks confused.
Yeah.
I think for anyone, because I think I kind of want to just sum this album up in terms of the general sound, just so people can get an idea of what they're in for. Because I think it's like, this is primarily like a doomy death album. As I'd say, it's probably equal parts doom, equal parts death, but like sludgy, like doom. So not like your stoner, like this is like your absolutely
this is heavy as fuck.
Like very talking of bands we've done recently on deep dives, like very reminiscent of Disembowelment at times. Like super low end, sludgy, like really haunting leads and slow chords. But the death metal parts are groovy as fuck. Like it literally sounds like Bolt Thrower.
It's so good.
And it's just like the vocals are amazing. The bass is like fucking booming and thunderous as fuck. Like the drumming is great. Like it's not overly flashy. He's playing everything perfectly in place. Like, the pace of the tracks and all the transitions, like led masterfully by the drummer, in my opinion.
It's flawless. And then they've inserted like indigenous instruments. Like in all parts of the music. It's not just like a bit at the beginning, a bit at the end. It's like it's always, you don't know what's going to happen next. Is there going to be a fucking death whistle? Are they going to start chanting? One of my like musical kinks is when people go ooh wah. I fucking love that sound.
Yeah,
I love
cool,
it.
yeah.
If someone does it in a film, I start losing my shit. If they do it on any form of music, I'm just like, oh, this is so good.
I'm the same. It's like there's a fucking blare on this album as well.
Yeah.
It's like a blare.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
I was like, shit. But one of my favorite parts is, I'm not going to try and look back and see which track it is because you just listen to the whole fucking album and you hear it yourself.
Yeah,
but there's a part where there's like a break and then there's like a death whistle and then like a sick riff. I'm thinking like, that is so fucking cool.
Yes.
But it's just so, because the thing is, it's simple, like in terms of like the music that's being played, like especially the guitars anyway. Like it's just shows that you don't need to be the most virtuosic musician to make good music. Like it takes so much skill to be able to take these riffs that have been used or riffs that have sounded similar to this that have been used in death metal for decades now, but still manage to package it in a way where it sounds fresh and authentic. And it's actually just kind of like revitalized my interest in the scene a little bit, almost single-handedly, because, when you've been listening to death metal for close to 20 years, it's like you kind of feel like you've heard it all. So it's just so cool that a new band's come along, their first album, and they're just like, it's already like, fuck. Like, this is like...
It's so good.
This has hit me out of left field.
It's amazing. I will say, so on the Bandcamp listed, Huey Itsekwanotl O, like Sano, the vocals and guitars. He apparently, according to Metal Archives, is Brian Ortiz, who's also in Xibalba. Xibalba.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Xibalba, a good band as well. They're like kind of like a hardcore
Heavy
kind of
as
death
fuck.
metal band, heavy as hell.
Yeah.
I think they're playing Outbreak Festival. You know, the hardcore festival in Manchester.
Oh.
Which I was thinking about going to, but clashes with Hellfest.
So maybe they're going to come to Hellfest.
Maybe.
I think they actually might be playing.
I think they might be because they do share some. Well, obviously with Hellfest, lasting like 2 months.
2 years.
Yeah. Making up for lost time.
Yeah.
So yeah, the good chance they probably will be traveling over.
Oh, maybe we should see if we can talk to Brian.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
That'd be so cool.
That'd be so cool. I'd love to stand next to him because he is like
he's
an
so
absolute
vast.
tank.
Yeah, like the vocals that man can put. Like,
no fucking way. Sick.
is that the Saturday?
Yeah, that'd be cool to watch because Xibalba are legit sick as
I
well.
can't fucking wait.
Yeah.
Yes. Perfect.
Because it's funny because there's two Xibalbas, so they're like the death metal, like hardcore Xibalba. There's a black metal Xibalba as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Who like and the black metal Xibalba reformed kind of semi recently. They had like this legendary album that always used to make me laugh because it's like Ad Zam Poop Ek or something. But had the word poop in it.
I thought that was the Xibalba that Ortiz was in.
No, that's the other. That's the black
other
metal
Xibalba.
Xibalba.
Oh.
Who've reformed recently. I think they released either a new album or a new EP or something in the last few years.
Yeah, because it's a Mayan underworld god.
Because that's how I found out about the Xibalba that this dude, the Big O, is in.
Yeah.
Because I saw that there was two of them listed when I heard that the other Xibalba had reformed.
That's wild.
So, yeah.
Thank you for there being two Xibalbas, because otherwise we would never have known.
But I saw this was actually listed on the Metal Injection weekly releases. So
wow, they get some really good releases on there.
Yeah, and this was like given like one of the spotlight ones, so it wasn't one of the additional ones listed at the bottom.
We were an additional for everybody.
But like, yeah, there's someone on their team are the ones that fucking turned me onto it because I saw it was listed and I was like, fuck, this sounds like a bit of me. I'll check this out for sure.
Thank
I was
you,
thinking,
Metal
fuck. I
Injection.
was like, this is amazing.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so hyped about this album. Like, I cannot emphasize. It's like I love a lot of the music we cover, but it's very rare that an album will grab me in the way that this one has.
Yeah.
And like, it's inspiring too. It's just wonderful to see people who do the kind of thing that I want to do myself, and they're doing their own way of doing it, and it's like mad inspiring, and it's great. And I like they dedicate this album to the indigenous peoples, nations, and tribes of the north, south, east, and west of the American continents, which I think is so cool. Like, I love that. So did some Twitter sleuthing, and Ortiz's personal Twitter. He has like decolonization in his, like, the word listed in his bio, which I think is really awesome. I think that's really cool that there are people who are like taking their culture back essentially.
Yeah.
But not doing it in like a awful violent way, just in a like cultural way. And I think that's great. Art is art. That's what art can be for.
Yeah, it's like, it's funny actually. That kind of reminds me. I remember there was the whole furore about people taking down like the statues.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like, no, let those statues be there because we want people to remember like the fucking racism and slavery a lot of these countries were built on. Like, I agree with the anger against the statue, but I just feel like, people need to be aware of the shit that's went down in most countries.
I respect that view. I think personally, I think taking a statue down is powerful because, like, when the Saddam statue got pulled down in Iraq, that was a big fucking deal. And like, I think there's a symbolism in the destruction of a statue that I personally can get behind at times.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
But like, I think a part of the problem was that a lot of people didn't even know who those statues were.
Yeah.
And they had no idea like who those streets were named after. So like, I think that's part of the problem with that kind of cultural erasure is that you're given these words, these people, these names, and you're like, because they're in a spotlight, you don't realize that they're slavers or that they're awful fucking people. But I also get that there is value in, like, for example, in Germany, where they've kept certain Nazi monuments because everyone fucking knows what that is.
Yeah.
And like, seeing that is shocking, and that's part of how you try not to get back to that place.
Yeah.
So I think it works both ways.
Yeah, no. It's just, you're absolutely right, actually. It's funny because I think I remember reading a story about one of the statues that was dropped in the lake and someone tried to retrieve it by swimming, trying to like lift it out, and they nearly drowned.
That's like, what was that lady who was like, I will single-handedly destroy ISIS?
Oh my God, that was amazing. Yeah. Oh
so
God,
funny.
I've got a name, yeah. Oh yeah, that was great. God, I miss memes when they made sense.
I know.
I mean, I love random memes as well and shit like that, but
We've transcended into like another realm of complete loss of meaning, which is kind of in itself beautiful. But back to this incredible album.
yeah, I think the last thing I want to say really is just a shout out to whoever the fuck produced this album. The guitar tone on here is absolutely ridiculously heavy and filthy. Like, it reminds me of Triptychon at times.
It was produced by the mastermind behind the album and Errol Ulug.
Well, there you go. Like, fucking absolutely stellar
Damn.
job, because it is one of the heaviest albums I've heard in the longest time in all aspects. So it was just...
It's a belter.
Yeah.
Yeah, please, if you like, check this album out. It's so fucking amazing. These guys, like, it's their first album, and I strongly believe that they're going to blow up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see them. I would love to see these guys on tour with, like, Malignant Altar, for example. I think that would be such a sick bill.
I want to see them live so bad.
Yeah.
I want to see them fucking toot on a death whistle, and I will lose my mind accordingly.
Oh, that's like, do you know the band? They're an Indonesian band called Gizzard.
No, I don't know.
They're like a brutal death metal band, and they're super. They're more slammy, but they also have like I guess like an Indonesian version of, like, kind of similar to like a Jew harp, and they would play that like before like a brutal slam would come on.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's the
like
sickest
boing,
thing.
boing, boing.
Yeah. And they play it during the slam as well, and it was amazing.
So
The guy was
cool.
doing like these uber guttural vocals and then bringing out the harp, and it was like fucking sick.
That's
Like,
so fucking cool.
amazing.
I love shit like that.
So if they actually do this instrumentation live, then that is like a must see. I'd have to see that shit live.
Mate, that would be amazing. Okay, shall we move on to something else that's suitably fucking crazy?
Let's do it.
So this was a bit of a wild card. I didn't actually listen to this before I suggested it. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, Omnium Gatherum. This is a mammoth band in terms of discography.
Yeah, I think I was saying before we recorded as well. I just presumed. I feel like I've heard of this band for the longest time.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I know that 2012 was 10 years ago now. But
Fucking hell.
which is mad. But it's like, I thought this band been around maybe since the 90s.
Yeah, I
or
thought
the
they
80s.
were like a long, like a
Yeah.
vintage band.
And
Yeah.
I thought the same when I looked at their discography and just realized, no, they're just super prolific.
I thought they were like Osric Tentacles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have no experience with this band. This is the first time I've ever listened to anything they've ever done. I feel like I need a music degree to even properly critique this album, because there's so much fucking shit going on here. There's so many genres and styles. Pretty much every genre and style
Yeah, literally.
is on this album. You know, there's tracks that have like proper like De La Soul style, old school hip hop beats. And it's just the composition of the album is baffling but super cool.
Yeah.
Because the first track is like 18 minutes long.
I know.
And it's amazing. I love the first track. I love the vocal melodies in the first track as well. Like the main like vocal refrain, I think is just really, really catchy and just stunning, and just got
So
some
clever.
really cool guitar work at 5:30, which is really blitzing and furious. Like they're obviously, like as Shem was saying before as well, like a jam band. So it's like a lot of the music seems to be, you know, a bit of a stream of consciousness. But it's just like, I was so blown away just by the amount of shit going on in this album, you know. And finished an 18-minute track, and there's like another 16 tracks, all about 6 minutes long. I was just like, fucking hell, like what a mammoth. Like, I'm glad I didn't do what I normally do and wake up early in the morning to listen to all the albums and like take notes. I was thinking
You'd
like,
still
fuck.
be doing it.
I'm glad
Yeah.
I done this one like earlier in the week.
Yeah, I
But-
did the same thing. I was like, I don't know if I suggested it with the caveat that it's a really big album.
Yeah.
So this band, I feel like the fans of this band, I've never met someone who likes this band that isn't a super fan even.
Yeah.
People are rabid about this band. They're Australian. They formed, as you say, in 2012, and they have had like they released 4 albums in 1 year.
Yeah.
They regularly release more than 1 album in a year. This is their second album of 2022.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see they have like a ridiculous discography, and I got aware of them because they have free albums using microtonal techniques in the album. So they have
Cool.
an album called Flying Microtonal Banana. So everyone was like, Nina, you should check this album out. You do microtonal shit. So I was like, okay.
You know who told us about them?
It's one of the guys at Dinner Jam.
No,
Who?
it was Mike Shite.
Fuck, it was Mike Shite.
Told us
Mike
from
Shite
Yob?
told us about this. Yeah.
When we met Mike Shite and gave him the record, we were talking to him about Middle Eastern music, and he was like, "Oh, you guys should listen to King Gizzard."
Fuck, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked to Mike Shite of Yob. And he was like, you guys should check out this album. Oh my god, I forgot about that. That's so wild.
That's such a sick name drop. I mean, we talk about amazing fucking bands. I mean, Yob, fuck me.
Yeah, they're fucking sick.
Jeez.
I love Yob. They're emotional and heavy at the same time. It's a beautiful combination. Yeah, I wonder if they're at Hellfest. It'll be cool to bump into him again. So yeah, Mike Shite likes this band. what other recommendation could you possibly give?
That's a ringing endorsement in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They have like custom made instruments as well for playing microtonal stuff. Yeah. Really, really cool. I love that.
They must play live, right? It must seem like a...
Yeah, they play a lot of shows, but it's obviously because they're Australian. I don't think they come over like this
they're going to have
much.
a very hard time fucking coming over now, I think. But actually saying that, I think Australia and New Zealand have opened up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because they were very, especially in recent years, they were quite tight on their borders, weren't they?
I know that New Zealand had like a massive metal festival. But it was like only for New Zealand people, and like there was like just no COVID, so they didn't have to. It was like 100,000 person festival or something.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Was it even 100,000 people in New Zealand? Christ.
Maybe they, I don't know. Maybe they got some actors in from like Lord of the Rings.
They'll film like
CGI actors, like Battle of Helm's Deep.
Just see some random orcs in the crowd for the live footage. Yes.
That'd be great. I'd love to take like an orc sword to a festival. It would end badly, but I'd love to just stand there in the crowd with like my big orc sword.
Oh, that'd be cool.
That'd be very cool.
See, I used to think, that shit was kind of cool. I'm not dunking on people that do this now. But the whole Viking horns and like bringing
when you're
weaponry,
younger, of course it's amazing.
Spiked gauntlets and shit.
I still like spikes. Yeah.
Spikes are cool, but I will say though, anybody that gets into a pit wearing spiked gauntlets, you're
That's
a fucking
bit of a
idiot.
Dick move, yeah. You're probably going to spike yourself more than anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone like whacks your hand into your eye, gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Gone, bang, and the eye is gone.
Bang. Nice. Damn it, beat me to it. But yeah, there's a couple tracks on this album I just want to talk about because I thought were really cool. I really like that. There's a couple of really heavy, like almost metal tracks on here.
There are, yeah.
You had Predator X, which has got some really
Metallica-like.
Yeah, just like really like a lot of like down tunes, like palm muted rhythms and stuff. What was the other cool metal track? Yeah, and it's funny because you got tracks like that, and you got tracks like "Blame It on the Weather," which is like a B-side like Prince track.
Yeah.
You got like the Guardian Goblin, which
it's my
is like,
favorite track.
it's like some 70s like pop track, but
it
with
sounds
like a contemporary production.
It sounds like Mort Garson's Plantasia with vocals.
Yeah, no, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
I love the lyrics. It's like the Guardian Goblin. He's looking at me. What's that look on his face? Is it contempt?
Yeah, that's so cool.
It's amazing.
And then Sadie Sorceress is another cool. That's like a proper like hip hop track.
That's my second favorite track.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like I am no way qualified to really discuss hip hop, but it has, from what I do know, it sounds like it's got that old school 80s, 90s hip hop feel. So more like the progenitors of the scene, you're like the De La Souls and your Run DMCs, as opposed to like the more kind of sterile.
This is like
hip hop.
This is like the good 90s era that I know nothing about hip hop. Yeah.
The only thing I know is because my brother, who you know very well, is absolutely losing his shit at the moment because Kendrick Lamar just dropped his new album.
Yeah.
And that is meant to be, and he says it's amazing. And Amy, so my fiance, is also absolutely in love with Kendrick Lamar. And she says it's a great album as well. And we're actually going to try and watch him live next time he plays.
No way.
Because apparently he puts on a really good show.
Luke should do a podcast.
He should. I mean, that man's got an encyclopedic knowledge of hip hop, and he's not like. And the thing is, and we know this in the metal scene as well. Like, much in the same way, you get those metalheads that are so steeped in tradition that refuse to accept any modern sounds.
Yeah,
it's very much the same way for a lot of those old school hip hop heads as well. There's a lot of them that don't think that there's any good new shit coming out, and it's just like. The truth of it is, when you keep your ear to the ground and actually make the effort to try and explore new bands,
much.
Like even Tzompantli, for example.
Yeah,
like,
what the fuck? Where'd they come from?
Exactly. Like what the fuck? Like that came out of nowhere, and they're not exactly. I'm saying they're not treading new ground in the sense of the pure instrumentation of the album, but like it's just fucking so refreshing.
It's fresh, yeah.
So.
Yeah, we could do like a rap arm of Serpent Temple.
That'd be cool. Yeah. But it's going back to the King Gizzard album. It's just some cool shit going on here. I love the title tracks as well. One of them, Ambergris, which is that's whale vomit, isn't it?
It is whale vomit. It smells really good.
Yeah, because they use it for perfumes, isn't it? It's like super rare and expensive.
The most expensive items in the world because like you can't farm it. It just turns up on a beach and it's like a big yellow blob of whale vomit and it just smells really good.
Well, it's funny because one of my relatives' partners thought he came across some ambergris on the beach and actually made like local press.
No, was it just some sick?
Yeah.
Some random person sick.
Some kebab from last night.
Some abandoned burger.
But it's an interesting one because I don't think you can sell it.
Really? I think it's a protected item of some kind.
Yeah, something like that. So I think you kind of have to. I think you can make money off of it somehow. There'll be some loophole, but I think most of it has to be donated because of how rare.
Yeah.
it is. But it's yeah. So yeah, just some cool shit. Gaia, that's the other heavy track I was trying to think of. I've got so much notes for this fucking album 'cause it's so long. It was cool because that track comes immediately after Kepler 22b, which is named after, I think, a planet that was discovered to be almost as habitable as Earth.
Yeah, it's an exoplanet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And that's got that's like a really bluesy, like funky track. And then you got Gaia, which is like a complete 180 and almost has like a lot of stoner doom. Like
You'd think it'd be the other way around. You'd think the planet would be the stoner doom song.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but I can see that obviously there's a lot of references to nature. You know, like Mother Earth. You know, tracks like Magenta Mountain, obviously Gaia, which is, I mean, that is Earth, right?
That's what the dripping tap is about too. It's about like time running out.
Oh, really?
And that's what the dripping tap is the symbol of, I think. Yeah.
Well, time didn't run out on that fucking track. It was 8 minutes long.
That was based on a jam they had the year before, I think, with another band. I can't remember if they did a split or something, and I can't remember the band, so sorry, shit presenter. But yeah, I had like very little time to research this. But yeah, that was based on a jam that they like worked on and then released as that title track.
I mean, that track is like an EP or album in itself.
Yeah, it's so big. Yeah.
But overall, yeah, it's just as a first, the first kind of exposure to this band. Like, I'm definitely very, very impressed. I am a bit daunted by the discography.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. We so like, I put on another album that was called, I think, something Gondwana Land, and that was really good. That was much heavier. And then they have like a more traditionally like kind of more metal album. I think their metal influences are mainly like Killing Joke, Asteroids, bit of Metallica. It's like kind of, oh my god, that's so weird. I looked out the window and I thought I saw an alien spaceship, but it's just a giant blimp. But like from this angle, it looks like a disc. I was like, what the fuck?
I can't even see it.
It's just this huge ass blimp.
Oh fuck, yeah, I can see it now. Yeah.
Like you don't normally see blimps in London.
Yeah, you fucking don't actually. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's the first time I've ever seen a blimp.
Yeah.
Take me to your dealer.
Yeah. It's every time I see a blimp, I say every time I see a blimp, this is the first time I've seen one. But like, I'm just reminded of that fucking Simpsons episode.
You were gonna say Simpsons, yes.
Where like Homer's gone on like the Duff blimp.
That blimp is iconic. Like
classic Simpsons.
We've all grown up with this like monolith of a blimp in our heads.
I saw a UFO once. Yeah, I'll tell you. When I say a UFO, I mean something that I could not fucking explain. It was when I lived in. He looks so interested.
I am.
It was when I lived in the one of the old sort of family houses in Camberwell. I just looked out the window and it was a fucking. And I remember it so clearly. I mean, you know what my memory's like, so I remember it so clearly. Max, my older brother, saw it as well because I think I was actually speaking to him about it the other day. I was like, "Fuck!" Remember when we saw that? I was like, "What the fuck do you think that was?" So it was a triangle, like spinning, but while moving in like a lateral direction.
Biblical angel.
Could have been, yeah. And it had lights on each point of the triangle and one in the middle.
Whoa.
And I was it was just one of those ones where we were young. I was maybe like 10.
Yeah.
So I saw it and I was just like, well, that's fucking weird. But then I had to meet all my friends who were going out to play football.
Obviously, you had to go do that.
So now I just totally forgot about it. But then it just always stuck in my mind and thinking like, what the fuck was that? I mean, maybe it was like a giant like, fucking blimp of, what's that Pokemon called? Is it Starmie or Staryu? But I don't know.
You know, I have a lot of weird stories about stuff like that.
Do you?
Yeah, I have a lot. Like, 'cause I used to hallucinate a lot when I was a kid. And I hallucinate aliens and shit.
Damn. Oh, I remember you telling me about like the night terrors.
Yeah. I've had a lot of like, and as an adult, I have a lot of night terrors. When I was like an older kid, when I was about 5 or 6, I was about 7 actually. I was lying in bed and I had a high bed.
Yeah.
So it was like a bunk bed without the bottom bit. And I remember, like, in the middle of the night, I was pretending to read. Well, I was pretending not to read, sorry. So, you know, you do that thing where you just, like, launch yourself into bed and pretend you're sleeping. So I did that because I heard a noise. And then, like, something wet and cold pressed really hard against my forehead.
That.
And, like, no one was in my room.
Yeah.
And I just remember being, like, so scared.
Yeah.
Like, my heart was, like, just pounding in my chest. And, like, I remember so clearly that feeling of, like, there is nothing that could possibly have done this in this house and that like I don't understand. Like it couldn't have been a spider. Spiders aren't cold and wet.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, and it was like pressing really hard on my forehead.
That's so weird. Yeah.
They are if one lands on you and you go like that.
I didn't do that though. I didn't slap myself on the forehead. I was too busy like pretending I was dead. So
I told you a story about how I slapped myself in the head once, right? It was I've got to be careful the way I sleep because like I was young at the time, but I was still quite like broad.
Yeah.
And I fell asleep on my arm, and my arm went dead in the middle of the night.
Oh.
I was like, oh fuck! So I was laying on the edge of the bed. I was trying to get the feeling back into it, and I hit my hand too hard and flicked back and whacked myself in the nose. But,
You poor thing.
yeah.
You know, I had a pyramid night terror once as well, where I woke up and there was an alien sitting on my chest, and it was like a green goblin with these gigantic black eyes. And before that, I was actually having a dream about Tom Hiddleston and being trapped on a planet.
Yeah.
And there was like these voices like in walkie-talkies. And I can't remember. It was like something about I had to find Tom Hiddleston. And I was like trapped on these sand dunes, and I wake up and there's this fucking green guy sitting on my chest, looking down at me like Fuzeli painting like. And then like outside the window there was this giant pyramid.
Fuck.
And like that was the ship. And there was like another guy in the pyramid, and they were using like this tractor beam to try and like get me up. Obviously, I don't believe this is real. This is literally a night terror. I was just awake while it was happening, and I was still dreaming. But this was the dream.
Yeah.
And I could feel like the blood, because you physically feel sensations and pain and stuff. So I could feel all the blood in my body, like trying to get through my skin to be sucked up into the spaceship. And I just
God
remember
damn.
like staring into this goblin guy's like dead black eyes.
Yeah.
He had this like malevolent expression on his face, and I was like, these guys are gonna cut me up.
Damn.
And I just remember like trying to fight my body to not like levitate off the bed, and then I woke up and
Yeah.
it was like okay.
God, it's mental.
Yeah,
Wasn't the lead singer of Nechochwen, was it?
it could have been.
Okay, no.
It could have been Mortis.
Oh, Mortis. Fucking Mortis. God,
Goblin
I've
nose.
not heard that name in a while.
Ah.
Did you hear about one time he was performing and it was like too hot, so the nose kept falling off?
No, that's
Just the image of him just being on stage, having to keep reattaching his nose.
You know what? Whenever I see him, I think of that interview we watched with Nardwar, where he's interviewing Slipknot, and the nose guy's nose gets flicked during
Oh
the interview.
yeah. It was a Chris Fenn, right? Yeah, I think it was Clown. Like reaches back and whacks his nose, and it's like wobbling. Yeah,
It's amazing.
I was like, oh man, that interview was so cringe. It was like, can you hear it? It's on out there.
It's on.
But yeah, no, I think that might be a good point to close up the podcast.
I think that is correct. I think thank you so much for listening to us talk about some amazing bands and some strange stories today. Please let us know if you want us to review anything else. We've got some good ones coming for you in the next few weeks. Thank you so much for listening. Feel free to like and subscribe.
Until next time.
Cheerio.
See ya.